Network. I'm Tim Simpson, and this is Emma Rose Simpson.
And I'm Mekia Taylor Simpson, and we're here with Joshua Simpson. He's 3 years old, and he was diagnosed with CP, cerebral palsy, at age 1.5. So when I was 17 weeks, I was diagnosed with
Incompetent cervix.
incompetent cervix. So as Josh grew larger, my cervix actually grew smaller. So at 24 weeks, I went in for a regular checkup, and we realized that Josh was in we were in labor, which is very new to us because it was our first child. I literally went in at 8 o'clock, and at 1 o'clock we had emergency C-section. Josh was born 24 weeks, weighing 1 pound 5 ounces. So I would say that's where the trauma started. But I feel like the trauma started when I was 17 weeks, potentially knowing that our child would be premature, and in our case, severely premature as a micropreemie. So we were in the NICU for 8 months and an additional 7 months at Blythedale in order for him to wean off the oxygen, because he's trached with a G tube, with a brain bleed, and with PBL. So there's a lot of complications came with being so tiny. He was, I would say, the most critical case that a lot of doctors seen because of how small he was and how underdeveloped all his organs was. I think excluded his heart. His heart was the only organ that was beating and doing everything he needed to do, but his lungs, his brain, everything got significantly damaged due to his prematurity, really. That was,
And the thing is,
Josh.
you have a kid that's or a child, a baby that is so, for lack of a better word, sick, right? You hear doctors say that your child is so sick, and they mostly lead with the things that your child won't do. It can be discouraging on a whole new front, right? The experience of itself is traumatic, that you have a baby this early and they're literally fighting for their lives, and doctors are telling you sort of worst case scenario all the time, and that was our son. I think so, to have that and to think there's a little beautiful baby and you're just not sure what they will do. And as every parent, you want your child to be healthy, you want your child to be strong, you want your child to have a fighting chance like any other child, right? So when you hear things like, oh, my child can't walk, or my child won't be able to sit up, or there's a lot of brain mass, those things, the words in of itself, right, can be traumatizing. And you think as a parent, what can I do to help, right? How do I go about empowering my little baby to be the best that they can be? And for some kids, it's we have a daughter now, and it's night and day, right? She is what they call a well baby, and she is able to sit up, and she has great head control, and she can reach for things, and she can make sounds. And with Josh, that wasn't the experience. And it was our first son, our first child, I think. So coming into it, there's a lot of my wife said trauma, but there's also the emotions that come along with it, right? You feel sometimes isolated because no one else really understands what you're going through in that moment. There aren't really clear avenues for help, right? Or clear avenues as to what the next step would be in terms of, therapies and physical therapies and occupational therapies, And when you leave the hospital, full care is given to you, right? Parental care is different. Medical care, my wife and I, we laugh because we almost, like real doctors now. We say, we are RNs in training because that's just what it takes, So to be able to have that story and to find, an avenue for help is always so important, to give our son the best possible chance of being and achieving all that he can, whatever his diagnosis may be.
I was Googling, and I actually came across the story with Amari, that little boy, and I was crying. I was like, oh my God, I need to reach out. So I called Christine because I saw the address, and it was like Memorial Avenue. And in New Rochelle, there's a Memorial Avenue. And I was like, oh my God, they're like up the road from us. So I called Christine, had a full blown, I think half an hour conversation. I loved her. I called Tim. I was like, oh my gosh, we have to take Joshua here. And Tim, being Tim and me being me, he read everything and he said, oh, this is in Long Island. So I called Christine back and I'm saying, I'm so sorry, because I made an appointment and everything to come in. So I called Christine, I was like, I'm so sorry, it's really far from us, and Josh is on oxygen, and I don't think this will be a possibility for us. So Tim and I sent him the video of Amari, and we watched it together, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then we started here. I feel like, when Josh left the hospital, it was in June of 2020, and that was June. And COVID, started like in March of that year. So leaving the hospital with a very sick child, traked, with a respiratory pandemic, everyone thought we were crazy just to have him out, because they're like, Josh was in the hospital for so long. Why are you being careless, really, in taking him to different places for therapy? And I felt like, it goes back to that quality of life that the doctor talked about, because even though your child's going to be inside, protected and I guess not sick, but how truly can they develop in your home not having a therapist work with them? And I feel like I had that in the back of my mind, that I'm gonna go everywhere. I'm gonna, experience everything for my son. So we really took a leap of faith in just taking Josh out of the house, probably too early. I remember when I first came here and Omari mom like saying that Josh is so tiny, like, I should be terrified, or, to take, if Omari was that small, to take him outside with a trach. But I feel like his quality of life for me was as important as his life. So if he wasn't able to do anything, what his life would be?
Yeah.
He'd be healthier and not sick, but he won't be able to do anything. So for us, Josh and therapies, I always felt like go hand in hand, like Josh with oxygen. He needs it to function, he needs it to survive. And we're just a big advocate for, physical therapy, breakthrough, anything that, has to do with working on your child's mobility is as important for us as anything else for them. So when Josh was in the hospital, he received, because he was in total hospital stay was 15 months. So he did do PT. However, because he was so critical for so long, his tolerance was like 15 minutes a day. That was his endurance. And then as we exit the hospital, we joined early intervention because he met all the criteria. Los Niños is his early intervention school that he goes to. I would say they're amazing because they're like mothers. They've been in their field for 20, 30 years. And I feel like it was a good starting experience for him because they led more with their heart more than with their skills. And I felt like he wanted and needed that, other than home, a safe haven to grow and develop naturally or organically, because he was so critical and so in a clinical setting, to be home and then around therapists, so it was great. That would be the first step. But when I called Christine, I was looking for something different, something that will, I always say push him, but something that will encourage him to work even a little bit harder, because at where he goes now, they're very much they baby him, and sometimes I feel like it makes his skills that we've learned here every Saturday kind of regress, because they're not pushing him and they're not trying to encourage him to work harder. They want him to be comfortable, and I love that. But sometimes in order for us to reach achieve a six-pack, we have to work a little bit harder than running 30 minutes on a treadmill.
For parents of medically complex babies, nothing is like set in stone, right? It isn't like, oh, you go to the hospital if you're sick, you go to the dentist if you have a toothache. When your child's medically complex, so has serious medical diagnosis, CP, genetic issues, there isn't a clear roadmap. So when you find those resources that it can be like, this is where I can go that will help my child sit up, or help my child with head control, or help my child reach for things, or strengthen their trunk, or help improve their tone. Those things are not necessarily as available. So when you found it, it's great. And Chief saw Omari's video and I saw it too, and it was very touching, because it's good to see that representation of a family with a medically complex child, right?
Yeah. I'm concerned that if he stays with what he's getting now, that he might not reach his full potential. That was really my fear, and that's what really kept me on the researching other alternative therapies for him. Because I remember before we got accepted into early intervention, we saw another guy I met on, another therapist, I met on over Instagram in Queens. So we were actively looking and actively going places just to get an hour here, a half an hour, And so I just wanted him to be the best self And as a mom, as a stay-at-home mom, I feel like my duty was to ensure that I'm looking, ensuring that I'm calling, I'm putting in the work. Because I always say, from the hospital, they told us it's going to be a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and I felt like I just needed to do the work.
You want your son to do the things that every other child is doing, right? And Tamara said we wanted to make sure that he maximized his full potential, whatever that potential could be. We knew as parents that it was more than what he was doing now, and we had a duty to find out and to give him that support. We can provide it. We unfortunately are not physical therapists, although we think we're getting close to it, right? But we had a duty, in his best interest to make sure that we gave him all the tools to maximize his full potential, whatever that could be. If it's just sitting up, we wanted Josh to be the best sitter-upper he could be. If it was head control, we want him to have the best head control, right? Given his diagnosis, that's what we want. And I think that's what every parent wants for their child, right? And to find again a community of people, Christine, Erin, Michelle, Monique, Jeff, who are all collectively coming together for the well-being of your child and you as a person and your family as a unit. I think that's priceless, right? And when you find an atmosphere of hope and an atmosphere of love, an atmosphere of caring, and true skill, right, and technique in being able to give, physical therapy, that is exactly what your child needs to flourish.
At the highest level.
At the very highest level, totally knowledgeable, totally experienced therapist. I think that to us was, invaluable. Definitely, I think, for lack of a better word, you feel like your child is trapped in a body that it can't fully use, right? Josh has, medical diagnosis that affects his brain and his overall motor skills. And, looking at him, you see a need to maybe roll over or maybe reach for something, but because of those limitations, you feel like he just can't even get his arms or his fingers or his neck to move. And, that's what you want, right? You want him that if he decides that he's hearing his favorite cartoon, that he can turn over and roll over and look at the iPad and even reach for it and sort of interact on that level. And you see sometimes a little bit of frustration in your child, and that can be in itself heartbreaking, right? And we have a 7-month-old now, and to see it just sort of come so naturally to her, and it's not for our son, even though he was our first, it's like, oh my goodness, this is what, every child should be doing, And as a parent, you just want to facilitate that as best as you can. You want him to be able to communicate and express himself and have some level of independence, regardless of his age, regardless of his physical ability. You want him and his voice to feel like, okay, I can turn over to my side, I can sit up, I can reach for you, I can reach for daddy, I can reach for mommy. Those are the things you want to do. And I think for us, when we look at him, we just want to make sure that any given time we are giving him, we laugh and we say a fighting chance, because that's what it is, right? It's a fighting chance. In the hospital, they gave our son, they said he wasn't going to go through the night, and that's something hard to digest because my wife had him so early and we didn't even know, right? So to hear that he may not make it through the night, they literally gave him 2 weeks to live, and he just had his 3rd birthday maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? And to have him here now, we think it's a miracle, and we thank God for it. So to see that he can actually sit up, to see that he is now, getting better, head control, to see that he's feeling confident in his body to do the things that doctors told us that he wouldn't do, doctors told us that he would never be able to do. I think that is always just a, wow, well, I wish you could see him now, and I think for parents of medically complex babies, to have your child really beat the odds, right? In whatever way, shape, or form, beat the odds for some is that, we've heard stories of kids born 24 weeks and they're like living a normal adult life, and we're like, you really beat the odds, So our son may be different. It could be that, he's able to sit up, it may be that he's able to walk, with aids, it could be able, whatever that may be, we want to know that he beat the odds, and that is just where we think that we can provide some opportunity for him. And breakthrough is a place that we feel it can really help support those needs and achieve that.
I think for me, it's not even just what he's capable or able to do right now, is the confidence. I feel like since we've been, coming here every Saturday, I feel like he feels something different in his body. He feels more confident into trying to reach or trying to roll over and trying to do more. And it's so simple and so small. And if you're not a parent, you like there's no growth, or you don't see anything. But for us, I feel like I see from the first day we did our evaluation with Christine, that when we got home, you could tell he was a completely different child. And that's why we kept coming here, because every Saturday we felt something different. He grew, like his confidence grew. He's matured in his body, and not just that he's able to sit up unassisted, because he's not right now, but is that the fact that he tries to do it. Before, he never tried to do it, but now he's more confident in trying to do it, and trying to roll over, trying to move his legs more, moving his arms more. The confidence for me is what, even the past 3 weeks, is like honestly like a completely different Joshua. We go home and every day is like he's trying to do something different. And again, maybe because we have a 7-month-old now, and he's trying to mimic her, but there's something that I would say breakthrough does for him that we probably don't see. Is like an unspoken language between Christine and his muscles and his body, but there's a confidence that you can't deny, really. That is what I've experienced here, and what Josh has experienced here.
Yeah, I think with Josh, he's very hypertonic, so it means he has high tone. His body can be very stiff at times,
Yes.
and we've noticed that he's just become so much more relaxed.
Relaxed.
Right? And if you feel like, imagine you're sort of holding a position for 24 hours a day, you get tired, right? Your muscles just want to give out. So when you see him just really relaxed, when you put him in a chair, he's sitting up comfortably. His legs are stretching. He has like really great mobility in his legs now. It's not stiff. Those are things that we think are the small wins that get us through the day, right? And that's what we talk about, the return on the investment here, right? Because it is an investment, okay?
Yeah.
But when you see sort of that progress for your child, and again, he's been running wrong or calling wrong as yet, but we see the improvement, and that for us is sort of invaluable.
For us, there was a lot of no's, and I understand from their perspective, because they always told us that they want to manage our expectations, and that they lead with the heavy hand, that he won't do this, he's not going to do this. So they always want to manage, because they always say they don't want the parents to come back and say, oh, my child can't walk, my child can't talk, it's very hard, my child, he's a vegetable. So the doctors always claim that we always want to put the ugliest picture out there for your child's future. And I remember they talked so much to us about Joshua's quality of life. Don't do it for us, do it for Joshua's quality of life. And I remember that very much, because you want to ensure that the decision that we were making in the hospital is right for Josh. But I always felt like he wanted to be here so badly, and I just feel like we are not going to give up on him. And when you see him outside now, it's like, how could we do that? How could we give up on him? And he wanted to be here so bad, Yeah.
100%. That is truly part of it. Like, we don't want to give, because they did talk about quality of life, and as a parent, you don't want to be the reason that your child is, for lack of a better word, suffering or not living, their best life. You don't want to think 15, 20, 30 years down the road that your child is, whatever it may be, right? You don't want a parent to say, oh, I made that decision, could it have been better? And truthfully, you never are able to, right? But we have decided to take a leap of faith. We decided to trust God and say, if Josh wants to be here, then he'll be here, and then God, you will strengthen us to support him as best as we can, right? And resources such as Breakthrough, Intensive, and not only the resources, but really the people, right? Because let's be honest, there are tons of intensive programs throughout this country and probably the world. I think for us, the people is what make the difference.
Care, yes.
We are both professionals that come from a hospitality background, so customer service is really important to us. And sort of that epicenter is, the care that's given. I can't stress that enough. You feel like you belong, you feel cared for, they're interested in not just you, but not just your child, but you and the rest of your family. There's support here for siblings, that all-encompassing sort of program. I don't think, you do all the research. I don't think we've come across many that do that, right?
Not the support.
So
and not just, asking how was their weekend, are really caring, those small details really just, I always say I wouldn't take my 7-month-old here if it wasn't as conducive, family conducive as it is now. You know,
100%.
you guys really not just care about Josh, but really, and this is honest how we talk,
Yeah.
even without you guys in front of us. But not you guys just not solely care about Josh. You know, because you go places and they care about Josh. But you guys really care about us as a family, as a unit, and every day, it's been fun. It's changed greatly because first of all, we're not going anywhere. We're gonna stay here for sure until he, as he grows, we're gonna, come back. I told Christine that we're gonna be on the treadmill soon. I just feel like, hope. I feel very hopeful. I felt like, at where he's going now, they're great, but he needed something like breakthrough. And for Christine and her team to, empower Josh to be the best self and to empower hope with, among us. That's how we feel. Feel hopeful that Joshua might walk one day. Hopeful that he can live an independent life. We're hopeful that, that he will eventually, go off to college. And these things that, we say as mundane or you don't think things through when you have an atypical child. You think it's like how Emma wakes up,
a natural progression.
yeah, and she's sitting up or she's holding her head up as a natural progression. When you have a child who's special needs, and with Josh medical needs, you think about every single detail of his life and what that would look like. So we'll break through. I feel more hopeful that the things that we imagine can flourish into something more than just a thought or a dream. It could be something real that he might be walking out of our home one day. So it's really hope and hopeful that he can have a very independent life.
That's really, it really is hope confirmed. You have hope, and sometimes you feel a bit guilty because you think, oh, I want my kid to do this, but they also are faced with these medical challenges, right? And people may think you're crazy, right? The medical community may think, well, that's never going to happen because we've seen a ton of kids with this and they are not able to do X, Y, and Z. So when you enter into a community where people are like, well, let's try and see, there is hope here, to have that sort of assurance given from someone outside of yourself who doesn't know your child, but is saying, well, we're going to put them in this little, harness and we're going to do these techniques and we're going to see how they come out. That I think is also just very, very reassuring for us, right? Because it feels like, okay, it's not just us, someone else also believes in our child, right?
That it works. I feel like that is really that you guys work. I don't know what Christine does beyond the cages in there, but her techniques, the manipulation, it works. Joshua was so high tone when we started here, and how relaxed he's been. And Josh, has PT 4 times a week, half an hour a day. So he's gotten, like, I would say the amount of more than the regular amount of PT, and still that wasn't able to get him to the position he is in now. So breakthrough works. What Christine and Erin and the entire team does, it works. It might look like fun, but it's actual work. And the kids, they respond to it. They respond, their bodies respond to it, so it's actual good things. It works, I will tell you. The product works. I always say not one day, because everybody's human. You wake up not having a great day and you're at work, because this is work for for everyone.
Yes.
And you never feel like that. And sometimes I'm very impressed with Christine, because I see her back to back with
How
clients.
does she do it? I don't know.
And the quality of service does not, I would say, regress or digress.
No,
yeah,
correct.
it just really just very sustained.
Every client one.
And receive that same, I would say, good morning energy. And that is a true talent,
It is.
Yeah.
Whether it's 8 a.m. or 5 p.m.
And that
Christine shows up when the team shows up, and that's
and the
important.
team shows up, Christine, but the team as well shows up, and that's amazing, and that's, I always tell her she hires amazing. She has the recruiting and hiring skill, because for you to copy and paste all your employees, like you, it's very much amazing and very, very, it actually talks up to her hard work and her skill and her people skills. So it's amazing.